Alright, let's talk about everyone's least favorite mixing concept, and that is masking. And the best way for me to tell you what masking is to show you what masking is. And let's take a listen to this stupid electronic thing. Focus on the bass. You're trying to hear every little note in the bass. Okay, now watch this. When I just mute this obnoxious lead, what happens? In my headphones, I went from being able to pick out like 2 or 3 of the notes, it seemed like, and little bits and pieces of the bass here and there, to hearing every note clear as could be. Now, whether that bass needs to have every note clear as could be is a whole other story, but let's just pretend for our purposes here that we do want to hear every single note of the bass. The only real way to achieve that is to start pulling out junk from that lead. That lead's too aggressive. And as is, there's no room for this vocal anyway. But let me show you some more stuff here. My original bass sound wasn't near that aggressive. Here's what I started with. Okay, and that's actually pretty aggressive. There's a lot of bite to that. There's a lot of grind. I wish a lot of the basses I recorded in rock and metal were that aggressive, actually. Bass players tend to be a little bit sissies around here. All right, and then here's what I end up with. And this brings up a tricky dilemma. With assuming the bass player loved his tone and started with this one I have labeled bass clean right here. Again, I know we're not doing a rock and metal thing, but work with me here. This is just a great way. This happened to be a great example of masking, and I wanted to go with it. Now, if this bass player said, this is my sound, this is what I want, this is how I want to be represented, blah, 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 like this, and we handed him this, he's going to be ticked off. We've taken this tone and we've ruined it. We really have. We changed it tremendously. Or guess I have. Anyhow, and I did that all because of this masking problem. I went way over the top. Now, electronic music kind of allows some luxuries in that regard. There are a lot of liberties there. The proper approach would be if we wanted to keep his bass the same. That means we've found an anchor point in the mix. And that's a big concept of this mixing stuff. It's one of the reasons I like to start with kick drum a lot of times, because I know exactly what I want on a kick drum almost every mix I start. If something I know is right, or I know I can get it exactly what I want, we can base everything off of that. So like in the example of a kick drum, we know that the kick drum is big and monstrous. I got the punch I want, and my meters are telling me everything I want to see, and I'm feeling it when I turn it up and all that sort of thing. Well, I know I can bring my bass in slowly and find a spot where those two can coexist. You know, obviously the bass and the kick drum are, making them work is a huge deal in terms of low end. And so once I get that to work, then I've got to figure out this mid-range business. So anyway, it's an anchor point. Now, when the Mr. Bass player says this is how it's supposed to be, what this does, let's go ahead and mess with it. We'll force this particular bass. Let's see, we'll send it to drums and bass. All right, there's nothing wrong with that at all. All right, but now the Zebra Main, my Supersaw synth here, it's either going to have to go down or we're going to take some bite out of it. So let's take a listen. And what I would do in this case first is do an inverted sweep technique. And just to see if there's any holes, that all of a sudden the bass comes through without doing a whole lot of damage to the synth itself. And good luck with this, but we'll see. Okay, right there, the synth or the bass came alive. Let me show you before. Oh, no EQ. And don't get me wrong, the bass is in there, but I want to hear a lot more of it without turning it up or doing anything with the bass. So we're kind of working backwards. So again, let's listen to where that bass jumps out, and let's see if it jumps out when I push this button. And it definitely did, and that's definitely too much. I don't like the sound of that. That's something that's problematic when you're EQing anything with tons of harmonic content, whether it's Supersaw synths or high-gain electric guitars. If you start taking big chunks out, you expect to hear that full frequency band, more or less. And when that goes, then you have problems. Of course, I cut out 9 decibels. I was getting aggressive. So let's just cut out Let's just do 2. Or not even 2.8. I'm going to actually type in 2. Let's see what that is. And now I'm going to see if I can turn the synth up a little bit, because I really want this synth up pretty hot. That's a big part of the sound. So let's go up 2 decibels now. And if you may remember another video I've done, I don't even remember which section we put the damn thing in. But the point was, with that was using, like, giving just a little bit of space to this guy. Like, we'll give 2K to this bass, and we'll cut 2 decibels on our super saw, but boost bass, maybe 2 decibels at 2K. And then maybe the low end will do, you know, basically giving little rationings, little 1 decibel increments to each little guy to give each instrument or each track its own space. And that's something that can come in really handy here with this masking business without running any individual tones in any obvious way. But anyhow, let's keep listening. Okay, and that's feeling pretty good to me. Now here's the hard part. What do I do with this damn synth? And this is something, it happens electric guitar too. We got this aggressive 2K bitey crap going on. Which again, no mic should have that much 2K anyway. That's pain stuff. And a good way to test that is just to crank your damn monitors. I mean, pretty freaking loud. Louder than you normally listen to. Make sure you've listened to reference material loud too on the same monitors to make sure the reference material doesn't hurt either. If reference material hurts, then you know your monitors are set up wrong or something. Anyhow, okay, then we got our lead. I've already notched it at 2.7K anyway because I hated the sound of it. I remember it had a really piercing tone, and it was a real narrow cut, so you can tell it was a really high Q, which was really painful type of deal. But anyway, let's listen. We're going to fit this lead into this thing without having to turn it way down. Let's see how we do it. Well, the first thing that occurs to me is this synth is, or this lead here is really loud. So let's yank it down 3 decibels. And that's stupid. I discovered the modulated arpeggiator recently in Zebra. No, they shouldn't have given that to me. I have no business with that. But anyway, let's go ahead and play with this. First of all, here's some low-end junk that needs to go anyway. So let's play with that. You guys going insane? You rock guys are just losing your mind. This is stupid. Stupid! And you're right. All right, but anyway, okay, so nothing really strikes me as being screamingly wrong once I got the low end tamed there with this particular track. So now it's just an issue. We're entirely dealing with masking now. That's all we care about is the interaction between the tracks. This notion of like tone for the sake of tone is gone. We got to actually figure out a way to wedge all this junk in there. All right, so here we go with the whole thing. All right, now the thing is, I already know that 2K is the hot spot for this bass. We discovered that with the main Super Saw track when we had the lead muted. Actually, it was 1.7K. So let's go ahead and do the same thing on this guy. Let's say, hey, Mr. Lead, why don't you share 1.7K? We'll just give you a 2 decibel cut, nothing crazy, a fairly narrow one. Let's just see if that cuts through. I got a feeling this bass is going to come alive because we already know that 1.7K is a sweet spot. We already established that. At least a sweet spot. There could be more, but... And that's actually not too damn bad. Let's give it one more. One more. I sound like I'm from Missouri. Which, unfortunately, I guess I am, but here we are. And now I'm hearing every single note of that bass. The Super Saws sound big, and this lead deal is obnoxious and doing exactly what it was supposed to do. All because we took the time to find the sweet spot and make special concessions. Like, okay, it's the bass guy's birthday. Let's let him be the star, and we'll give him this one little pittance of 1.7K. And we can do it in ways that not only did this, it actually made the mix better, I think, because this lead was abrasive. There's no doubt about that beforehand. And by pulling out this stuff right here, it really kind of cleaned it up and made it a lot smoother sounding, which was something I wanted anyway. Now, one of the problems with mixing is it's real easy to spend a day, a year, month, whatever, based on what I'm going to call a bad foundation. And if you start with a bass sound that was more like my previous one, the real nasty one, this is the one we went with. All right, and you go to this, which is really, really bitey. And now I kind of regret having that really nasty bass like that. But anyway, when you start out with the really aggressive bass, and then you base all of your decisions around that nasty bass, like in terms of whether it's the guitars, whether it would be the super saw synths in this case, and the leads, and then the vocals on top. What happens is you keep getting bitier and bitier and bitier because you're trying to just keep on stacking that stuff. And a lot of times it's best to find something that sounds good, a kick and a bass, or even some electric guitar. Find something, a drum and a rhythm instrument that you really like. And it doesn't really matter what they are as long as you really like them. And if you say, okay, well, these guitars are awesome, I'm not going to run these awesome guitar tones just so I can, fit some bass in there. Well, the deal is, if you have some tracks that you know are great, you don't have to mess with them at all. Those are your anchor points. Those are your foundation. You know they're good. So then the things that aren't quite fitting, you can start focusing on. And then when it comes back to it, you can start tweaking a little bit and say, okay, and even this bass right here, I could go ahead and add just a hair of 2K or 1.7K. Let's do that too. Let's just add 1 decibel. 1 decibel isn't going to, Mr. Tone Junkie won't ever know that. In fact, he might be glad you did it if it makes his bass just a little bit more clear. And again, I want to be pretty narrow on that. Let's listen to that real quick. And the other thing, the red flag I had before was this bass was being a 16th note arpeggiated type of thing, was supposed to be one of those, it's a fighting thing. It makes you want to dance, go, 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 go. It's a speeder upperizer. And before, when we were losing those and kind of getting it killed that whole feeling of like, hardcore dancing thing, Mortal Kombat fighting, for you guys my age. That came out when I was in junior high school. The movie, I mean. Anyway, so the track starts to feel really good, too, when we have certain elements that were in there that were being lost, that were crucial to the feeling I was going for when I wrote this epic masterpiece. Okay, so the points here are masking is that stuff that happens when 2 tracks fight each other, where one has to win, or you guys have to come up with a compromise where one gives a little here, one gives another there. The compromise is always the best approach, assuming you can't get the sound in the room or the sound on the synths themselves. Sometimes they just fight a little bit, and I don't think there's any pro-level guide that can make some track that needs 0 EQ when you start getting into really loud, dense mixes. Maybe, but you don't even bother trying, in my opinion. I mean, to try, but when you fail, go ahead and do stuff like, 1 decibel boost and things like that. Okay. 2 is, if you have some really good tracks, don't screw them up because other tracks are pushing you in that route. If you know you like any given track, there's no reason it has to change at all. So force the other guys who maybe the tracks you're not as sure about where they fit in the mix, make them conform because you're not sure. If they were blowing your head off, then you'd already know it. And lastly is when certain elements of a mix that are there to drive a song's intensity, and whether it makes it happier, sadder, gladder, whatever, all those things, little triggers that make a huge impact. If the purpose of that track, like I'm putting this bass here because it's going to make the song feel fast. Well, that was the purpose for my 16th note arpeggiators there. And if that suddenly doesn't happen anymore, that track is no longer effective. And I've screwed up majorly, and maybe the whole song in question could be ruined. There should be a purpose for every single track you make. So with this bass being before wounded, it really did pull the song down, in my opinion. It didn't do what I wanted it to do. So with this masking business, by taking the time to make sure each instrument does what it's supposed to do, does its job, the music can be way more effective. All right, guys, I hope I didn't rant too long there. Thanks. Bye.